All right, what's up, everybody? This is A7X Fan Ben, and this is a video about the worst crew abilities in Pirate CSG. So we're gonna just go through PSM lists a little bit, pick out a few. These are not necessarily useless or never worth using, but they are some crew that you probably won't use too much, and some I would probably not use in competitive games, to say the least. So become test from Crimson Coast. This French crew, once return randomly, take a treasure from any ship she touches. So 3 points seems too high for this. I would probably price this at 1. And sometimes it's nice to like win a boarding party and then be able to take an extra, but it's just not worth the cost. Usually those 3 points will be much better spent elsewhere. I do think the faction haters are overpriced. So this is where you can get +1 to your cannon rolls against a specific faction. I think 3 points is too high, especially because World Hater is usually 4, and that gives you +1 to the ship's cannon rolls against anything other than that game piece's faction, usually. And so 3 for just one faction versus 4 for usually all of them, or the ones that you're facing in that game, is just not the best deal. And I could see +1 against Pirates maybe being worth 2 or maybe 3 points, but I think most of them could get away with 1 or 2 points. So these are just kind of overpriced for what you get. I will say, if you're using a zero limit ransom +5 crew and you see your opponent's fleet as all one faction, then you might want to put something like this guy on like your Spanish flagship if you see that you're facing the English. But usually they're just kind of too expensive to justify using. Marines are definitely overpriced for what they do. They're not that much better than Musketeers, and I don't think I've really ever seen them be successfully used on islands very much. So instead of 7 points, this could go way down to probably 3 or 4 per Marine. And once again, it has like a faction bonus that probably won't be relevant in the game. And then this next one, Porthos, is an example. There's a bunch of crew that give +1 to boarding rolls. I think the best cost for that is either 1 or 2 points. There was some reverse power creep. It started out at 2 points with Jenny's Red Rampage in Spanish Main, but then it got jacked up to 3 points and then 4. So it's just not worth that many points when it's more expensive than Captain, but it's a worse ability. So, and then we've got Carl Smith, who's kind of a variant. So he's got +1 to boarding rolls, but then he's also got +1 to cannon rolls against forts within Essever, which can be decent if you know you're going to be facing forts. Again, this could be brought in via a zero limit ransom +5 crew. If you see your opponent fleet is competitive, or they've got forts like set up, like ready to go or something like that. But these two abilities, neither of them are usually that impactful. Sometimes, I mean, you're not guaranteed to see forts in any game. So, and then tacking on the boarding bonus for a full 5, I think this could be 3 or 2 points probably. So not too useful. Ralph David has some really good versions, like from Revolution and Rise of the Fiends, but his Barbary Coast version has only Ghost Ship for 8 points. I think it's one of the only times Ghost Ship appeared on a crew, but it's not worth that much. It's really like pretty similar to being able to ignore terrain. It's a little more, it covers a bit more than that. Ghost Ship covers a bit more than that, but it's not worth anywhere near 8 points. So this is a near useless crew. So he's kind of a weird anomaly. And then this is an overpriced ability. Papa Doc, Edward Lowe from Mysterious Islands also has this. So it's called the possession ability. So it's really hard to use because you got to get with an S, and then you have to have an action available just to make the roll, and then you have to roll a 6 just to get it to work. So this is very unlikely to work, let alone be used multiple times in a game. So 8 points is just way too high for it. I could see this at 2 or 3 maybe, I'm not sure, but overall extremely hard to use. And then especially because you're probably going to be facing some pretty intense return fire from the other ship, because you got to use your action for the turn just to try to do the possession. So not great. And then this one I mentioned because he's got Captain and Reverse Captain. So Captain is 3. They put Reverse Captain at 6. I think it's better off at 2 points. And so Reverse Captain is basically after the ship resolves a shoot action, she can move as a free action. And part of the problem is you can't combine it. You can't combine the two. So you have to either start with a move or start with a shoot. So you can't chain them. That's like probably the most common rules question of all time, I would think. So not great. He could easily be 4 or 5 points and maybe at least see some usage. And he's also got other versions that are way better, of course, too. So Nedlands is one of my least favorites. He's got +1 to boarding rolls and then +2 instead of her opponent is a sea monster submarine. But that's just, you're a lot of times you'll never get boarded by a sea monster or submarine. This can't be brought in. He's 6 points, so you can't bring him in with the 0 limit ransom +5. So you'd have to include him in your fleet if you knew your opponent was using against a bunch of sea monsters or something like that. But overall, I would price him more at like 2 points probably, maybe 3 at most, but I think 2 would be fair. So he's like, yeah, it's just crazy, too expensive. Scald Blood Axe. This is one of my least favorite abilities actually. It doesn't get talked about a lot, but if this ship succeeds at a boarding party, choose 2 of the following: eliminate a crew, take a treasure, or eliminate a mast. So 7 points for that. So if you win a boarding party, you'll be able to either eliminate a crew or take a treasure anyway. So you're only adding 1 thing onto it. It almost sounds like you're doing 2 things instead of 0, but it's really just 2 instead of 1, obviously. And then the ramming may have eliminated a mast anyway, and you can do that with shots for less points. You can get World Hater for 3 less points and eliminate more mass that way. So I feel like this ability probably should be more like 2 points. So I would say he's one of the worst crew in the game because he's that overpriced. Truly useless ones would be ones like Leon and Park from Caribbean, where they basically protect a higher point crew, and then you eliminate them instead. But the problem is oarsmen do that for cheaper, and they don't take up cargo space. At least the first one doesn't. So you could have 2 oarsmen. So instead of having these 2 crew on the same ship with a net loss of 1 cargo and 4 points total used, you could have 2 oarsmen, net space of 1 lost cargo space for 2 points. So these are just like, even if you use them together to get the link, there's no real benefit. You're just wasting points basically. So, and then Governor Weatherby Swan, I actually want to try this out in some games where he's brought in with a +5 when you see your opponent's fleet is all pirate. But he says when touching a pirate ship, ship can load as much of that ship's treasure as she can carry. It's very specific, and I haven't really seen it used much. I think maybe it could be useful in some competitive environments, but I've yet to try that out. So overall, it's just really specific and unlikely to see play very much. Captain Arazur, so he's just like Scald Blood Axe, but cheaper, but 5 points is still too much for that ability. So, and then this one sounds awesome in theory and it's fun to use, but it doesn't usually pan out to anything good. So if a crew is eliminated, roll a d6. On a 6, they get assigned to Wraith's ship. Nationality changes the match to the nationality of the ship, becomes linked to this crew. So then you can use their abilities and stuff. But even in campaign games, when I've used this, it's surprisingly ineffective. Even if you collect a lot of crew, it's hard to, a lot of times you get duplicate abilities where you don't really need them. Or even if a ship with sack has it and you're sacking the crew, a lot of times you end up, even in a campaign game, sometimes you'll end up with so many possessed crew that you can't even sack them all before the sack ship gets destroyed or sunk. So, or captured or sunk, I should say. So overall, it kind of sounds cooler than it behaves in play. So anyway, that one's definitely not useless or anything, but it's enticing, but it doesn't really pan out well in my experience. And then a couple other ones, Marcus Miguel Antonio. So he's got decent abilities, but I'm not sure, it's just 10 points, which is wildly high cost. So you can look at a face down treasure on any ship or island. That's a good ability, probably worth 2 points, maybe 3, because you can use it on every player's turn, so that's pretty good. And then home island rating, good cost for that is probably 3. You could argue less maybe, but 10 points sounds like probably about at least twice as high as it should be for him. So that's another one I wouldn't really expect to see much. And then Rolando is kind of interesting, 4 points. If you're touching another ship, reveal all face down treasure aboard the other ship. The ship can take as much unique treasure from the other ship as she can carry. So this one is really specific, and I've not seen this used much. The problem is, to touch the other ship, usually you're going to ram and board, and then they might board you to steal stuff back or kill this crew, ironically. So I guess it's kind of interesting in like a big game. If there were a lot of face down treasures, you can see everything on like maybe a treasure ship like Guichuan or Baochuan, and you can steal the UTs without having to win the boarding party. So there might be some niche use cases, but usually in most games, 4 points is much better spent elsewhere in your fleet. So feel free to like the video if you enjoyed this. Question of the day is, what is your least favorite crew in the game? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it. If it's something like one of these that's not that useful, or if it's one that's supposed to be good that's kind of disappointed you and you haven't had good results with it or something like that. So would love to hear your thoughts on that. Feel free to check out the affiliate links in the description. If you buy from those, it'll help the channel, it'll help Pirates with Ben, and it'll help my efforts to keep this game alive and bring it back. And feel free to subscribe for more Pirates CSG content. Thanks for watching.